for me, and is just he's been part of my life, my family's life for so long. My earliest memory, in fact, even before my earliest memory, I was the firstborn child of the first grandchild, and my Dadaji was a real Ram Bhakt. So my original name is actually Sita, believe it or not. And there was a proper Namkaran ceremony and everything that took place, and that was my name to start with. And then I think that was what my Dadaji named me. And then a year later or so, my Masi came in and she says, this name Advaita is like this philosophy and things like that. So then there was a switch, in the sense that, this is more unique, or or those kind of discussions must have taken place. I wasn't privy to them. But so I still have photographs of my Namkaran and the big party that was hosted. So that's like the first sort of thing, and it was fascinating. I mean, my grandfather on all his waking hours he used to do jap. He used to do Ram 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 Ram. And as a child, that used to be amusing, because one would think that why doesn't he keep doing this all the time? But it's only now as an adult that you realize the kind of affection, the kind of focus, and pursuit for a union with Ram that he must have been trying to achieve in his own way. And so for me, Ram has always linked me back to a very happy time of my life, a time when I had my grandparents, and that kind of an association. So it's very personal for me, and because he is Maryada Purushottam, and because he was sent on Vanvas, and because he didn't even have that temple in his birthplace, there is a certain quality to Ram. And I'm speaking of him as a human being, because his avatar on earth was that of a human being, and that is, I think, what is wonderful about the Hindu faith, and I'll get into that in a little bit, is the fact that we can connect with our gods as human beings. And to me, the unfairness of Ram, because he was Maryada Purushottam, being denied during his avatar on earth, and being sent away on that 14-year Vanvas, and then being denied again in present terms a seat in his place of birth in his city, was something that was tragic. And I remember going to Ayodhya a year and a half ago. I had been there as a child, but I went back again. And, you had to go through barricades, you had to go through security, checks, body checks. And by the time you reached the tent where Ram Lala Virajman was there, and you would just, it was heartbreaking. There is no other way to explain it, because I understand how this could happen yet again to him, because he's Maryada Purushottam, because he's always been the good guy. So that was the kind of emotional, that this is a very emotional response that I'm giving you. It's not necessarily an argued response, but it's a response. As for the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, I was, of course, very, very young at that time, believe it or not, and didn't have any personal involvement in the movement, was not even, I mean, in school, so was not even very, aware of things that were going on at that time. But I certainly remember that it happened. And I remember there being a mixed response in my own family. There was a part of my family, the UP family, which was in Kanpur and all of those places, wherein my mamas, my mother's cousins, had been part of, the movement and had gone there. And then there was the other half of the family, which was not really involved at all. So, there was no conversation from that side. So it was this kind of a impression that I had at that point in time. So that was really about big for or against. I was just too young at that time. So that's the one big thing. And now finally, to speak about tomorrow, it's very, very momentous. It's been coming for decades, for years. It has been such a struggle. People have lost their lives. People have put everything at stake. I remember meeting with some people and older people, 85-year-olds, 90-year-olds, and people who were from the Sangh in Nagpur and places like that, and discussing the Ram Janmabhoomi. Jinkya ji is laughing, but actually discussing it with them. And these are the people who were in their prime when the Ram Janmabhoomi movement was happening. People like Lakshman ji and all, and the reaction was just fire. I remember that 85, 90-year-old people, and their eyes lit up and their tone changed, and just the passion that they exuded. It really drove home to me that this was a fight, and it was a struggle, and it extracted some of the best years out of people in their lives, just focused on it. So we're very fortunate, that we can come in at this point and watch this beautiful temple being made, and come on these shows, come on TV. I'm going to be on TV tomorrow and talk about it. And we're really the lucky ones, because there are people who have done immense sacrifice. And when you speak with older people, you realize just what that means. And a lot of people talk about it, oh, it's just a place, it's just this, it's just that. I think it's the first step in a longer battle, a battle wherein there has to be a reclamation not only of spaces and places, but even of the mind, and a mind that has been oppressed, a mind that has been gaslit under 1,000+ years of foreign oppressive rule, be it the Islamic rule, where at the tip of a sword people were made to convert, or be it Christian rule through the East India Company, where there was mass conversion by other means, and a sort of the unwashed masses narrative that was used for Hindus during those many, many years. And we being gaslit into a kind of thinking of our own culture, our own civilization as archaic, as regressive, as out of step, as having not any real value. And these were things that have been codified, that have been taught in schools. So when Nehru at the time of Somnath said revivalism, this will lead to Hindu revivalism, that attitude was really codified post-independence, and has, underlined our academic discourse, our public discourse, our public perceptions are managed based on that line and that kind of codification. So I think a reclamation of the mind, a reclamation of the consciousness of Bharat, or what it means to be India, which is so parallel to Ram in so many ways, is really the way forward, and the journey that we all have to undertake as a people, as a nation. Because today we may be building a temple, but who's to say 100 years from now, 200 years from now, that temple may be knocked down again. Remember when the first temple was built, and it was a Bhavya temple, when you look at all the archaeological finds, you know that it was a very grand temple. No one would have imagined that it would be knocked down and reduced to rubble and just not exist for centuries and centuries. So I don't think these are things that we can take for granted. It's a continuum. And the only way that we can really solidify ourselves, really make sure that we continue as a civilization, as an ethos, as a thought that can serve the rest of the world, is by preserving and by reclaiming our minds and understanding our own civilization, our own culture, and our own history. And I think that's nothing to be apologetic about. In every civilized nation in the West, there are movements for reparation, there are movements for reclamation. It is only in India where you are called communal for expecting that. So I think this is the first step in a long journey that has been a long time coming.
इतिहास के साक्षी बनिए रितम, पांचजन्य, ऑर्गेनाइजर और न्यूज भारती के साथ। न केवल मंदिर निर्माण अपितु राष्ट्र पुनर्निर्माण की इस घड़ी में जुड़िए विभिन्न राजनैतिक, सांस्कृतिक और साहित्यिक योद्धाओं के साथ। अपार्ट फ्रॉम द लाइव प्रोग्राम फ्रॉम अयोध्या, एक्सपीरियंस एन इंटेलेक्चुअल स्टिमुलस। Join us on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook.